Cain is a poor orphan who got murked while playing Captain Save-A-Ho. However, the gods reward him by reincarnating him in another world with unlimited cheat skills, so he decides to start aura farming while defeating his enemies and rizzing up all the baddies. This story starts with a late-night trip to the store, which ends terribly as two girls are suddenly chased out by a deranged lunatic. In a moment of bravery, Cain charges towards the attacker, only to get unalived by a butter knife and left on the ground like roadkill, while the girls desperately try to help him. The next moment, Cain wakes up in what looks like a royal room and spots a maid named Sylvia, who immediately gets excited about his being awake. The next moment, another woman named Sarah grabs him, claiming to be his mother and asking if he remembers her. But after looking in the mirror, Cain freaks out, as he can't recognize his new body. Much later, Cain realizes that he was reincarnated, and so he starts learning as much as he can about his new world, and his speedy progress shocks everyone in his family. One night, while having dinner, Cain's father, Garm, commends his progress again, and Cain uses this opportunity to seek permission for magic studies. However, his sister, Rain, says he has to get baptized by the gods at a certain age before he can use any magic. In the meantime, Garm allows him to study as much as he can about their world's history, and Rain starts tutoring him every day, while Cain secretly discovers that he can already use magic and decides to tell no one. A few years later, it's finally time for Cain's baptism ceremony, and no one is as excited about it as he is because he finally gets to see the outside world. Along the way, Rain shows him her magic status, and their parents explain the different classes of magic he might receive from the gods. Minutes later, at the sacred temple, Cain is presented to the statue of the gods for his blessing, but the entire temple suddenly gets engulfed by a blinding light. The next moment, Cain is facing all 7 gods in a spirit plane and is surprised when Xenum, the god of creation, recognizes him. A goddess named Reno then explains that his death in the previous world was irrelevant because the criminal would have tripped on his own before reaching the girls. As Cain becomes upset about his meaningless sacrifice, the gods explain that he was granted this new life as a reward for his bravery. They then take turns blessing him with every gift and ability at their disposal. Moments later, Cain is back in the temple, and Graham immediately asks for his status because they have never seen such a bright light during a blessing ceremony before. However, Cain makes up an excuse to leave and secretly checks his status, revealing an insane collection of the greatest abilities on the highest level. Cain panics, knowing that this is too much power for someone of his age, so he uses a conceal spell from Xenum to hide it. Hours later, the family gathers for dinner and Garm asks for Cain's status again, so he gladly pulls it up. But Garm flips out because Cain's abilities make Saitama look like a small fry. The girls celebrate it, but Garm immediately tells everyone to keep Cain's powers hidden because it will attract the wrong kind of attention. Later on, Cain returns to his room and spots a summoning book, which makes him excited as he has always wanted to summon a fluffy pet. He then heads outside and tries a quick spell, but instead of Winnie the Pooh, he summons a colossal demon that immediately corners Rain and her friend Parma. Once again, Cain decides to play hero and almost gets popped like a flesh balloon, but he uses magic to send the demon away. However, the attack leaves him collapsed and struggling for air while the girls shed tears over him. Luckily, Cain manages to pull through thanks to his new abilities, and the girls are relieved. The next day, Garam officially introduces Cain to the people, and he thanks them for all the help and support before revealing his dream to become an adventurer. Later, while eating, Garam tells him that dreams are nice and all, but he still needs to study, so he brings in tutors to teach him. Afterwards, Cain waits in his room, wondering what they're going to be like, then gets excited to meet them. When they finally arrive, he runs to see them, but while looking down from above, he loses his balance and lands face first on one tutor's melons. When he gets up, Millie tells him that she can't nurse him anyway because the milk factory hasn't started production yet. After Cain apologizes, they all head inside, where Millie and Nina properly introduce themselves as Cain's tutors. When Millie tells Nina to drop the nonchalant act, Cain says that they don't have to be so formal since they're his teachers now, and both of them relax a bit. Garm asks them to train Cain for the next 3 years, so they get started right away. Later, at the training grounds, Millie tells him to show a few sword swings, and she quickly realizes that Cain is already way too good. Nina even says that he might be better than Millie, and Millie doesn't find it funny, because she immediately challenges Cain to a practice fight. Cain rushes at her, and Nina has to work just to keep blocking his attacks. She asks if he has the blessing of the god of war, and Cain admits it while still swinging like he's trying to speedrun the lesson. Millie gives up watching and says that she wouldn't survive fighting at that pace, so they move on to magic instead. Nina says that she's got a level 3 blessing from the god of magic and wants to start with the basics, but Cain says that he already knows them and shows a few beginner spells. Nina says that those aren't normal beginner spells because he just used enchanted magic, and shortening spell chance usually takes years of training, so she realizes that this dude is basically built different. Millie also notices that he used every single element like some bootleg avatar, and Nina says that's supposed to be impossible because nobody can use all the elements that well. Cain then says that he also has the blessing of the god of magic, collecting blessings like their Pokemon badges. The two teachers get even more shocked when Cain pulls towels out of his item box for them. They realize that teaching him inside the mansion is probably a bad idea since one mistake could turn the place into free building materials, so they ask Garm for permission to train him outside instead. The next day, they head out, and Nina tells Kane to cast an intermediate spell at a big rock. Kane throws out a fire spell, and the rock explodes into tomorrow, with both teachers sent flying, and a huge crater is all that's left. Nina tells him that the spell was nowhere near intermediate, while Millie wonders why he still isn't tired. That's when they realize that Kane has a ridiculous amount of magic, like he's got the nine-tailed fox inside him. Right after that, a killer rabbit shows up and charges at Kane with killer intent. Kane dodges it, takes it out with wind magic, then stores the body in his item box so he can show his family later. Millie says that she wishes she had a magic bag that works like an item box, but those things cost way too much for her wallet to survive. Nina then uses a search spell to find nearby monsters, and it shows where they are. Kane wants to learn it too, so Nina gives him a quick lesson. He tries it once and somehow manages to detect every nearby monster, along with what type they are. They go around beating up the monsters until one of them runs into the forest. Kane immediately chases after it, but Millie stops him and explains that the forest is full of dangerous monsters that attack the city every few decades, which is why the place is guarded like the final area in a role-playing game. That night, Kane notices that he's already level 8. Thanks to the skill that gives him 100 times more experience, he's leveling up faster than someone who bought the deluxe battle pass, so he blames the gods for making him way too overpowered. Later, they head to the guild hall to pick up a quest, but some huge Dumbo with no brain starts making fun of Millie and Nina for being D-rank adventurers. He jokes that their mission must be a nanny's job since they're hanging around a future man. He then orders Millie to pour him a drink, but she refuses, and Nina says that they're working right now. The guy gets mad, grabs Nina, and his friends hold Millie back. Kane walks over, slaps the guy's hand away, and the man drops to the floor in pain. He gets back up and tries fighting Kane, but can't even touch him. After getting embarrassed long enough by a mini-sized final boss, he pulls out his sword and keeps swinging, while Kane dodges everything like he's trolling the big fella. Kane then catches the sword with 2 fingers before throwing him outside. His friends threaten to unalive Millie, but Kane rushes them too and throws all of them outside, helping the guild clean its clutter. Millie and Nina thank him, and Millie is surprised he's also good at hand-to-hand fighting. Kane then says that he just learned it from reading books and not from Tibetan monks. After that, they go back to the forest and keep training. 3 years pass, and it's finally time for Millie and Nina to leave. Kane wants to thank them for everything they've done, and remembers Millie talking about wanting a magic bag, so he heads into the dangerous forest to gather the materials himself. He beats all the powerful monsters like they were tutorial bots, but the giant pillars of fire from his attacks get spotted by a guard. The guard thinks the monsters are attacking the city again and immediately sounds the alarm. Moments later, Garm and his soldiers rush to the forest, ready for a huge battle, only to find a massive crater instead. After finishing the last part of his training, Kane gives Millie and Nina the magic bags he made himself. He tells them about the monsters he defeated, and it turns out those monsters normally need a whole team of A-rank adventurers to beat, but Kane handled everything alone. He also says that the bags can hold an entire mansion, and only the owner can use them. Millie and Nina then tell him that those bags are way beyond national treasure level, making Kane accidentally hand out legendary loot like it's a goodbye gift. With that, the 3 of them say their goodbyes and part ways after spending 3 years together. 2 years later, Kane is now even older. He fights this dragon and takes it down so easily that even he is surprised. He checks his stats after that and sees that he sorta overdid it because now his magic is over 80 million. So much for keeping a low profile. Later, he and his family head to the royal capital for his debut, which every noble son has to attend, whether they like it or not. His sister, Rain, says that she can't wait to live in the capital with him, and she wants him to enroll in school immediately, but their dad says that he doesn't quite have the facilities for that yet. Garm then says that the trip should take about a week, as long as monsters don't decide to be annoying. Kane uses his search spell along the way and suddenly notices people getting attacked by monsters about 3 kilometers ahead. Garm tells everyone to move faster, but Kane already knows they won't get there in time, so he jumps out of the carriage and uses a boost spell to take off on his own. Up ahead, the monsters are about to finish everyone off, while one soldier does everything he can to protect the royal carriage. Just as one monster is about to reach it, Kane shows up out of nowhere, wipes out the monsters, and finishes their leader with his fire sword, sending him burning on his way to burn even more in hell. After that, Kane checks on everyone and introduces himself as Garm's son, then heals the injured soldiers. Sadly, some of them don't make it, so he carefully stores their bodies in his item box instead. Garm and the others finally catch up, only to realize that Kane already solved the whole problem by himself. The royal carriage opens, and out steps Princess Tellez and the Duke's daughter, Silk. They introduce themselves, but the princess immediately passes out from everything that just happened. Kane then uses a spell to help both girls calm down, and they quickly feel better. They thank him for saving them and admit that they watched him fight from inside the carriage. It also takes about 5 minutes before both girls start competing over his sausage, because why not? Silk asks why Kane is traveling, and he explains that he's heading to the royal capital for his debut. The girls say that they're going there for the same reason, reason and ask him to ride with them instead so they can keep his Johnson safe and warm for him. And with that, they kidnap him right in front of his father. During the trip, Kane gets stuck sitting between both baddies inside the royal carriage. He tries moving to another seat because the whole setup is way too awkward, but neither of them lets him escape. When they stop at a town for the night, the girls ask Kane to stay in the same room, definitely only because they still feel unsafe after the monster attack. Garm tries pointing out that boys and girls sharing a room isn't exactly a great idea, but the girls say that they're still scared and want Kane there to protect them. Kane eventually gives in, as long as the room is big enough. Then they get inside and realize that the beds are all right next to each other anyway, so that condition lasts about 3 seconds. The girls tell Kane to sleep in the middle and even push the beds closer together. They stay close to him the whole night because they're scared of monsters, while this virgin spends the entire time being scared of them. The same thing keeps happening for the next few nights, so by the time they finally reach the royal capital, Kane looks like someone who has lost a long fight against insomnia. After getting out of the carriage, they're welcomed by the vice captain, Gazzard, who thanks Kane for saving both the girls and his soldiers. Kane then takes the bodies of the fallen guards out of his item box so everyone can properly honor them for giving their lives to protect the princess and Silk. Before he can leave, Gazzard stops Kane and says that the king wants to see him. He takes Kane to the throne room, where he greets the king properly. The king tells everyone how Kane saved the royal carriage by defeating a whole group of orcs, saying that his daughter and the others would have been sent to Jesus if he hadn't shown up. As a reward, he makes Kane a baron and even gives him his own mansion. One noble dude named Corgino immediately complains that Kane is way too young to become a baron, so the king asks Corgino if he could have done everything that Kane did, and the room gets really quiet after that. Corgino has nothing else to say, so Kane ends up accepting the title, even though he clearly wasn't asking for extra paperwork at that age. After the meeting ends, Kane waits in another room with Garm, who says that he's the first of his sons to earn a promotion like this. A little later, the king walks in and suddenly bows to Kane while thanking him for saving his daughter. Kane immediately tells him to stop because seeing the king bowing to a future man like him just feels wrong, but the king says that he's thanking him as a father, not as a king. He then explains that Kane is amazing with both magic and sword fighting, plus he has blessings from the gods, so there's no way the kingdom is letting someone like him just wander around doing whatever he wants. That's the real reason they made him a baron. Then the king says that he also wants Kane to marry Princess Tellus. Right after that, the duke says he wants Kane to marry Silk, too. Kane's brain blue screens on the spot, while the two girls look way happier than they probably should. The king explains that since Kane already spent several nights sleeping in the same room and bed as both girls, people could easily misunderstand the situation, so making them officially engaged solves the problem. Turns out the whole thing was also part of their plan to make sure Kane stays in the kingdom. Everyone keeps pushing the idea until Kane eventually gives up and agrees to marry both of them. Later, Kane visits the church in the capital and prays to the gods. When he enters their world again, he asks about his stats, and Xenom tells him that he's completely cracked like a play-to-win player. At this point, Kane is probably the strongest human alive, and Xenom even asks if he wants to become a demigod. Still, he warns Kane not to get carried away, because even cracked-out characters have their limits. Xenom also says that their world is pretty boring, so he suggests Kane use ideas from his previous life to make something new. Kane likes the idea and decides to bring over an item that doesn't exist in this world, and Xenom agrees. After returning, Kane meets Parma, who says that she's training at her uncle Tom Manny's shop. Kane heads over there and looks around at all the different things they sell. He then shows Tom Menace a drawing of the item he wants to make and explains how it works. Tom Menace likes the idea right away and says that he can make it without charging a crazy amount. Kane then asks him to build a prototype, hands over a gold coin to cover the costs, and tells him to treat it as an investment. Tom Menace happily accepts and promises to do his best. Sometime later, Tom Menace finishes the prototype and shows it to Kane. Kane likes how it turned out, then plays a game with Parma to show everyone how it works, and Tom Menace quickly realizes that people are going to love it. Kane also suggests making a fancier version for nobles, because he knows rich people are definitely going to start asking for the deluxe edition. He then gives Tom Menace enough money to start making them in large numbers. Tom Menace is so happy that he bows on the spot and promises not to waste the chance. The two of them take the sample to an altar and swear an oath to the god of commerce. Then, the prototype disappears after the contract is accepted, meaning that nobody else can legally make the same product for the next 3 years. And with that, he basically invents patents. Kane tells Tom Menace to start selling it next month and asks him to make an extra fancy one for the royal family. After that, Kane heads home, where he's told his debut ceremony is about to begin. He quickly gets ready and leaves with his parents. On the way, Garm warns Kane that becoming a baron has made him very popular, so a lot of noble parents are probably going to throw their daughters at him, basically having him drown in royal kitty, while others like you die of thirst. They soon arrive at the venue, and the royal family makes their entrance. The king then gives a speech about the next generation. Then Kane walks over with his family and shows him the game he made with Tom Menace. The king gets interested right away and asks Kane to meet him after the ceremony. Garm has no idea that Kane is a game dev now, And Kane explains that owning a mansion isn't cheap, so he needs another way to make money, because legendary titles don't pay the bills. After that, Kane's parents leave him to mingle with the other buds. He sits with Silk, who immediately starts teasing him, but they're interrupted by Corgino's son, Habit, who walks over and starts flirting with Silk like he's already won her hand in an arranged marriage. He gives her a compliment and clearly expects something back, but Silk barely acknowledges him. One of Habit's friends then tells Kane to show some respect, so Kane gets up, introduces himself as Baron Kane, and greets Habit properly, but they assume that he's just the son of a baron instead of the actual baron. Habit decides that Kane must be some poor, sad, lonely, wretched noble, since he didn't even mention his family name. He starts looking down on him and even threatens to have his friends beat him up unless Kane apologizes. Kane then tells the frog Breath that he's the rude one instead, so they head outside to settle it. Habit proudly says that his friends have blessings from the gods and can even use magic. The first one steps up and charges up like he's taking powers straight from Zeus himself, just to throw out a tiny little fireball, and Kane casually dodges it. The second one tries looking all cool too, but all he manages to do is throw a few weak rocks, shooting tutorial level spells in a boss fight. Before they can embarrass themselves any further, Silk finally gets tired of watching. She tells them that Kane isn't the son of a baron, he's the actual baron, then lists everything he's accomplished. The boys immediately realize how badly they messed up, and since Kane outranks them, they bow, apologize as fast as they can, and leave before things somehow get even worse. Silk then tells Kane that she figured out that he's got a sneaky side, because he knew that they had the wrong idea the whole time and just let them keep digging their own graves for entertainment. She agrees not to tell Tellez about it, but only if Kane goes on a date with her. Right then, Tellez walks over and asks what they're talking about, so Silk casually says that they're going on a date, which instantly makes Tellez jealous, until Kane promises that he'll take her on a date too, already managing multiple appointments with two baddies. Just then, the king shows up to call Kane over for their meeting. Then Tellez reveals to him that they're going on a date, which makes Kane freak out. The king tells him that they're going to have a heart-to-heart during the game, and Kane just knows that he's going to get chewed out. Later, they sit down and play the game Kane invented, and the king has so much fun that he wants to keep it all to himself. Kane quickly tells him that's not happening because the game is going on sale for everyone. The Duke is there too, and both he and the king remind Kane that his engagements to their daughters are still a secret. They also tell him to be careful on those dates and not let anyone find out, because apparently he's a philanderer. The next day, Kane receives the deed and key to his new mansion. The old man tells him that he barely managed to stop the king from dragging him into another game of Reversi, because he's become completely addicted. Kane thanks him for dealing with one obsessed gamer, but just then, the Duke walks in asking for a match too. The old man gives up and joins in, then somehow a bunch of other people appear out of nowhere, wanting to play as well. After that, Kane heads over to check out his mansion. When he arrives, the place looks completely abandoned. He walks inside, but none of the lights work, so he lights everything up with magic instead. He looks around and finds every room covered in dirt with no furniture anywhere. Instead of complaining, he just uses his magic to repair and clean the entire mansion in one go. A few moments later, the place looks brand new, like the last 100 years of chaos never happened. Not long after, Sylvia shows up and is happy to be working for Kane again. He also meets his new butler, Colin, and Sylvia immediately tells the maids to start cleaning. But they quickly realize there's nothing left to clean because Kane already did everything himself with magic. Colin reminds Kane that he should head back home since his older brothers are coming to visit, so when his brothers arrive, they are surprised that Kane already owns a mansion and has become a baron this quickly. Rain gets excited and wants to see the place, but the brothers joke that it's probably haunted since everyone knows the mansion was falling apart before, but Kane tells them it'll be fine. When they get there, everyone is shocked because the mansion looks amazing. Garm can't believe it since it was basically a ruin the last time he saw it, but he quickly figures out that Kane must have fixed everything himself. They walk through the rooms, and Garm says that the only thing missing is artwork. Kane wonders why anyone would care about that, and Garm explains that nobles love decorating their homes with paintings, armor, and even stuffed monster trophies. As soon as Kane hears that, he decides to hang up one of the monsters he defeated. A few seconds later, Sylvia suddenly screams, and everyone rushes over to find a giant red dragon sitting there. As Kane realizes that he forgot to mention that he had one stored away this whole time, Garm immediately asks where on earth Kane got a red dragon, and Kane just tells him that he defeated it in the forest a while back. That answer almost gives Garm a new headache, so he explains that a red dragon is a calamity level monster that even A-rank adventurers would struggle to beat. He also says that it's worth 1,000 platinum coins. Kane quickly does the math and realizes that's basically around $100 million. Now, he sees that he was carrying around a walking lottery ticket inside his item box and completely forgot about it. Before anyone can process that, another scream comes from somewhere else in the mansion. This time, Kane's mom wants to know what kind of toilet sprays water at people. She says that they've never seen anything like it before. Kane explains that he used magic to make it work like that, and Rain immediately asks him to install one at their house. 2. Garm laughs at everyone for making such a big deal over a toilet, but they tell him to try it first before talking. So he does, and changes sides immediately. Now, Garm wants one too, saying that any guests visiting the mansion would love it. Cain asks what guests he's talking about, and Garm explains that every noble who receives a mansion has to throw a debut party. Later that night, Cain's lying in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what he's even supposed to do next, but Cullen already has a whole list ready. Cain skims through it and sees Corgino's name on there, and asks why he would invite that guy, but Cullen explains that Corgino's a high-ranking noble, so skipping him would just cause problems. Cain asks why the king isn't on the list, and Cullen says that only high-ranking nobles can officially request the king's presence, so that's off the table. Then Cain starts thinking about food and drinks, and panics because he also needs gifts for everyone. Sylvia gets some ideas, and Cain figures out that he can just make glasses with his magic. Most folks are used to plain porcelain cups, so he decides glasses are his thing now. Next up is food. He digs up a recipe from his past life and whips up some hamburger meat, and Sylvia tries it and loses her mind over how good it is. Then she tries his drink and gets confused by the bubbles, because wine isn't supposed to do that, so Cain explains that it's magic fizz. Right then, Cullen says that the king wants to see him. So Cain heads to the palace, and the king is mad because he never got an invite, and apparently, the duke's been rubbing it in his face. Cain says that he was saving the invite to deliver it in person. The king buys it, flips to being happy, and Cain's just relieved he didn't get thrown in a dungeon. Party night arrives, and Cain's at the door greeting everyone. The duke shows up with Silk, and they're both staring at the red dragon like it's some kind of flex. Cain thanks everyone for coming and gives a toast. People take a sip of the sparkling wine, and suddenly, everyone's amazed. The duke comments on the glass itself, saying it shines like treasure. Then the king walks in and tells everyone to chill and have fun. He tries the sparkling wine and loves it. Then he gets to the steak and finds it juicy and rich with a cheese center. Meanwhile, the queen bursts in, all excited about the toilet, calling it revolutionary and demanding one for the palace. The king checks it out himself and immediately says they need these everywhere. Everyone's impressed. Then Cullen reveals that Corgino just showed up. Corgino walks in, acting rude, talking about how small the house is, but then he sees the red dragon and shuts up. He then heads to the dining room, looking down on everyone, tries the sparkling wine, and even though it throws him off, he pretends not to like it. Then he tries the steak, calls it disgusting, but keeps eating it anyway, and snatches more sauce right out of Sylvia's hand. Cain's annoyed, but Cullen whispers to him not to make a scene. Cain then gets an idea, though, figuring it's fine as long as he's not the one starting trouble. He offers Corgino the glasses as a gift, but Corgino gets greedy and demands all of them. Cain tells him that they're gifts for everyone, but promises that he's got something even bigger for Corgino. Corgino lights up, and then Cain reveals the surprise. It's the king. Corgino freezes, and the king yells at him about setting a bad example as a noble, so he bolts out of there immediately. But the king eventually figures out that Cain used him as a pawn, and instead of letting it slide, he gives Cain his share of scolding, too. A few days later, Cain hits up the barracks and runs into Vice Captain Gazard. He tells him that he was told he could leave his monster materials there, so Gazard takes him to a warehouse where he can drop them off, but Cain says the room isn't big enough. Gazard figures he must have something huge, like that red dragon at his mansion. However, Cain says it's nothing that impressive, just an earth dragon, but Gazard is still shocked, saying it would take a whole party of A-rank adventurers to take one out. They head to the courtyard, and Cain pulls all the monsters out of his item box. Gazard can't believe how many there are, but these are really just his A-rank ones. He's still got S-rank monsters hiding in there, thanks to the gods making him a broken pay-to-win player. Gazard wonders if Cain is a hero or some disciple of the gods, but Cain just says that he's an ordinary midget. Gazard decides not to ask too many questions and tells him that it'll take a while to appraise everything, so Cain says he can come back whenever they're ready. As he's about to leave, Gazard stops him and asks him to help train the knights, saying that he wants to show him off to the captain. Gazard then introduces Cain as the hero who took down 30 orcs to save the princess, and Cain wonders where the captain is, so Gazard says that she'll probably show up once the mock battles start. Cain imagines the captain is some scary monster, but Gazard tells him not to worry. They start the mock battle, but one knight says that he feels bad because Cain is just a future man, so the knight gives Cain the first move for free, telling him to show what he's got. Cain uses his boost spell, dashes in, and disarms the knight instantly. The knight admits defeat right away, and Cain thinks he overdid it, but Gazard grabs him and tells him to take on all the knights at once. Then the fight stops because Captain Tijuana pulls up, sees her knights picking on a young man, hugs Cain, and tells him everything's okay, thinking he's just some lost brat. She demands an explanation from Gazard, and he explains that Cain is actually the hero who beat 30 orcs. She gets excited and challenges him to a duel, and Gazard tells her to introduce herself first, but she says they'll get to know each other with their swords. The knights think Cain doesn't stand a chance since Tijuana's a master swordsman. Then, they get ready to fight, but Cain says that he only has a wooden sword. Tijuana attacks anyway, uses her boost skill, and charges in. They get into the thick of it, and the knights are shocked to see Cain keeping up. They seem evenly matched, but Cain boosts his speed even more, gets behind her, and claps her. Tijuana gets all emotional and immediately decides she's gonna marry him, so she can have this legendary secret sword. However, Cain says it's too soon since he's too young, and doesn't even know her. So Tijuana introduces herself as captain of the Royal Knights, an honorary viscount, and daughter of a duke from the Northern Forest. She tells him not to worry about age, since she's an elf who'll live at least 300 years, so her looks won't change for a while. He then hides behind Gizzard, saying that marriage is a big decision and they can't just decide things on their own, especially since he's already engaged to Tellez and Silk. He cries for Gizzard's help, but the dude just pretends to be asleep. Tijuana agrees that they can't decide things alone, so she tells Gizzard to arrange an audience with the king. Kane thinks that's a terrible idea, but has no choice and gets dragged along. Later, they meet with the king, who wonders why Kane has shown up out of the blue. Tijuana announces that she wants to marry Kane, and the king asks what happened. Kane explains that he beat her in a duel, and now she wants to beat his Johnson. The king asks if he told her about his other engagements, but Kane says he couldn't since it's supposed to be a secret. The king explains that elves used to be kidnapped and enslaved for their beauty, but their first king made peace with them. The elf nation was then taken in and put under the kingdom's protection, and he reveals that Tijuana is basically their princess. The king tells Tijuana that Kane is already engaged to Tellez and Silk. She looks disappointed, but then says that only makes her want him more. The king says she needs to write to her father for permission, and she leaves to write the letter, but drags Kane away so they can fight more. After they leave, the king wonders how Kane could be able to pull 3 hot baddies at once. Gizzard tells them about Kane's reaction when asked if he was a disciple of the gods, and the prime minister suggests testing him with a certain book. A few days later, Kane is exhausted and runs into Gizzard again, who asks why he looks so tired. Kane tells him that Tijuana's been forcing him on countless dates, which are really just them fighting. Gizzard thanks him for helping her get stronger, and Kane reveals that he also got the Master Swordsman title. They hear Tijuana's voice, and Kane tries to scram, but Gizzard drags him, saying that the king wants to see him. Kane thinks he's in trouble, but the king shows him a book with emperor-level magic passed down in the royal family, said to be written by the first king. Kane checks it out and is amazed that there's another level of magic, but the king reveals that no one can read it because it's written in Japanese. Kane realizes he messed up, thinking the first king must have also been reincarnated from Japan. The king then asks about Kane's identity, and he can't hide it anymore, so he explains that he was reincarnated with memories from his past life. Garm wonders if he's really his son, and Kane says he is, because the gods told him so. Everyone's shocked he met the gods, and he recalls meeting all 7 during his baptism. The king can't believe it, and they ask to see his status, so he opens his real status window, shocking everyone with his level 10 blessings and title as God's chosen. The king then says that everyone in the world would bow to him, but Kane doesn't want that, because he's happy with his adventures and the people he's met, so he wants them to treat him the same. The king agrees but jokes that he could be king if he wanted. Tijuana interrupts with a letter from her father agreeing to the marriage, so she grabs Kane and takes him to the courtyard. The king orders everyone to keep Kane's secret, hoping he'll protect the country. Later, Tellez and Silk find out about his engagement to Tijuana, and they get mad at first but accept it, telling him not to accept every proposal that comes his way like fan mail. Tijuana bursts in looking for him, wanting to share their love, and the girls ask him what she means by that, but he gets dragged away trying to explain that it's just fighting. Much later, Kane flips through the first king's book and finds a message that says if he can read it, he's from another world too, so the book is the king's own story. The king's name is Yuya. He got in an accident and thought he died, but unlike Kane, he kept his original body when he showed up like he's got a battle pass. Tellez and Silk catch him reading and ask if he's studying for the academy exams. Then they ask if they can join him, but Kane says he's busy. They ask about tomorrow, and he says that's worse and runs off. He then bumps into Tijuana, who wants to fight the love fight again, but he apologizes and runs from her, too. The next day is his birthday, so he has finally gotten enough age points to register as an adventurer. He then heads to the guild and checks out the place, where an adventurer notices it's his first time and tells him to stay safe. Then the guy walks off, but Kane feels like he's seen him before. Kane goes to the counter, where the clerk introduces herself as Tia, so he asks to register, and she gives him a form. He wonders if he should indicate that he's a baron, but he leaves it out just to be careful with his identity. After minutes of boring paperwork, he finally finishes filling the form, and Tia asks him to put his blood on the crystal for his card. She tells him that he starts at G rank, and he remembers that his tutors were D rank. While she explains things, some adventurers interrupt and tell her to stop wasting time with the future man. One sad and ugly loser tries to kick Kane, but he dodges. The guy's buddy swings, and Kane dodges that, too. They both look dumb, and the first guy reaches for his sword. Then the red-haired adventurer steps in. They all recognize him as Claude from Ice Flame, and Claude asks them if they want to fight, but they all run faster than the wind. Kane thanks Claude for sliding for him, and Claude says that he can tell he's strong from how he moved. They then grab a drink and sit down to enjoy it together when Claude asks how he got so strong, and Kane says it's his tutors who gave him lessons when he was a lot younger. Kane asks about the Ice Flame that was mentioned earlier, and Claude tells him that it's his party, cause while he uses a fire sword, his wife uses ice. Kane thinks it's cool that they work together, and Claude tells him to find a reliable party to rank up faster, and he shows his gold A rank card. Kane is impressed by this, kings, and Claude says that the first king was Triple S with a black card. Just then, Claude's wife, Lena, decides to make her guest star appearance and smacks Claude on the head for drinking. Cain quickly introduces himself and says Claude helped him, so she thinks that he's cute and offers help, then drags Claude off by the ear. Cain then checks the quest board, where he finds things like cargo transport, but he wants to fight monsters. He finds a goblin quest with no unaliving limit and thinks it's perfect. Then he runs into Tijuana. Gazzard says that they're doing night training, and Tijuana asks what Cain is up to. He says it's his first quest, so she decides to come along and tells Gazzard to handle the training. Cain quickly tries to make a run for it, but she grabs him and they hit the forest. As Tijuana is having fun dragging him and asking where the goblins are, Cain uses his search skill and spots them ahead. They then find a guy surrounded by goblins, so they rush over, and Cain heals the guy. However, after Tijuana cuts down a bunch, more goblins show up, so Cain boosts her strength with his magic, and she feels like they're moving as one. She cuts through the rest of them easily, then a giant goblin shows up, but she slices it in half. She starts daydreaming about their wedding and asks Cain to praise her, but then green lizards pop up. Cain then tells her to get the injured guy out of there and says he'll handle it. He blinds the lizards with a light spell and follows up with ice pillars that shoot up from the ground. Later, Cain's tutors check out the area where the green lizards were, but all they find is a giant crater. Cain reports to the guild and asks if he can turn in the green lizards like their dirty laundry. Tia is shocked, because green lizard quests are normally C rank, and he took out 30 of them. So she runs to get the chief. The chief, Cedric, meets with Cain and says that the guild master is busy, so he's handling it. He feels there's no way a newbie could unalive a green lizard. Cain says he really beat them, but Cedric figures he's some peasant scamming for reward money and decides to revoke his card. Then the guild master, Eden, walks in. Cedric explains the situation, but the guild master laughs and tells Cedric that he's got a lot to learn. Cedric can't believe he's taking Cain's side, and then the guild master calls in his guest, Tijuana. She hugs Cain and calls him her husband, leaving Tia and Cedric completely lost. Cain asks what she's doing there, and she says she came to talk about goblins and green lizards. Eden says that Cain is a baron and the guy who saved the princess, but Cedric can't believe it since there was nothing about that on the form, but Cain says he left it out because he didn't want special treatment. Then Eden says that if Cain marries Tijuana, he'll be his brother-in-law, which surprises Cain because he just found out the guild master is Tijuana's brother. Cedric begs for forgiveness, and Tijuana says he should be executed for insulting a noble, but Cain accepts the apology and tells him not to jump to conclusions. Cain asks about the green lizards, and Eden decides to promote him to C rank. Tijuana then protests that he's stronger, so Eden bumps him to A rank, though he'll need to handle some bandits first. Tia and Cedric are bewildered about a one-day A rank promotion, and Eden tells them to deal with the paperwork. After they leave, Eden apologizes for Cedric, but Cain says it's fine. Eden admits he was worried when he heard that his sister got engaged, but feels better after meeting Cain, and tells him to take care of her. Meanwhile, the gods are watching and laughing at everything. They wonder if making him this strong was a mistake, but Zenom says he needs to get even stronger, cause some bloke named Aaron is about to break out of a seal from 300 years ago. They worry about what will happen when he gets free, so they figure Cain needs to train with a specific master to hit the next level. Back at the palace, the girls ask to study with Cain again, but Tijuana bursts in, saying she enjoyed their forest date and they should do a beach date next. The girls quickly realize he turned them down the other day just to go out with Tijuana instead, so they tell him he owes them dates too and ask him to grovel. The next morning, Cain is in bed when Sylvia bursts in apologizing for forgetting to wake him up. Today is the academy entrance exam, so he rushes out and tells her not to worry since he won't be late. Once outside, he uses instant transmission to the academy, checks in, and gets directions to his room. On the way there, he notices he doesn't recognize anyone on the list. When he gets to the room, he wonders if Tellez and Silk are taking the exam somewhere else. The examiner comes in and says they've got 2 hours, warning that cheaters get kicked out immediately. The test is basic math and writing, which Cain finds easy thanks to his past life knowledge. Moments later, the examiner notices him relaxing and asks what's up, but he says he's already done. She's surprised since it's only been 30 minutes. After the test, they move to the courtyard for magic assessment, and the examiner tells them to hit the target with their strongest spell. Cain asks if he can go all out, and she says the barrier will protect the area. A boy goes first and chants for a fireball, but it's as powerful as Yamcha against the Cybermen. Another student goes and is just as weak, so Cain realizes this is normal for weak rookies like them. He was going to use his Inferno spell, but figures that's a bad idea, so he channels his inner Azula and makes a blue fireball instead and obliterates the whole wall. The examiner can't believe it, so Cain tries to explain himself, while the examiner checks the area and tells them to move to the swordsmanship exam. Over there, the examiner brings in some A-rank adventurers to help assess them. Cain is surprised to see Claude, who asks what he's doing there. Claude wants to be his opponent, but Cain tries to decline until the examiner says that Claude is the highest ranked, so he can't refuse. They get ready to fight, and Claude tells him to show what he's got. Cain figures Claude should be strong since he's A-ranked, so he uses his boost skill and starts attacking. They exchange blows, and the others can't believe how fast they're moving. Claude is impressed and says that Cain is stronger than the other examiners, but Cain tells him to take it easy since it's just a test. Claude gets too excited and uses his own boost, so they move even faster until the examiner stops them, because Claude's being too extreme. Claude admits they went overboard and says they should go on a quest together sometime. The examiner then says he's seen enough and tells Cain to go home and wait for the results. He heads back, and Sylvia asks how it went. He says everything went well, and she wants to throw a party. He says it's too early, but his stomach growls, and she rushes off to make food. At the palace, the king questions Cain about the damage. Cain says that the examiner said he could use full power because of the barrier, but even with just beginner magic, it still blew things up. The king is surprised he can use emperor-level magic, but Cain says he's not sure what would happen to his surroundings if he used it, and asks if there's anywhere to practice, but they tell him absolutely not. The king then asks where he took the exam because Tellus said she didn't see him. Cain says he checked in at the south entrance and got directed to his room. Hearing that, the king asks why the academy has both a north and south entrance, and Cain realizes his mistake right away. The north entrance is for nobles, and he ended up taking the exam with all the commoners instead. The duke says that this even caused a problem with the headmaster. In a flashback, the headmaster told him that there was an issue with releasing the results because a commoner got a perfect score on the written test, destroyed the training area, and fought evenly with an A-rank adventurer. Thankfully, the duke knew it was Cain and told him to release the results. Back in the present, the results are up, so Cain looks for his name, and Silk says he's at the top, with Tellus second, and she's third. His sister rushes over, thrilled to see him. She's impressed that he's number one and wishes him luck on his speech, since the top student always gives one at the entrance ceremony. Cain wishes Tellus could do it instead, but Rain says he has no choice, so Cain goes home, and Sylvia is hella happy that he passed. She says they need to celebrate, and that she'll cook for 100 people, so she rushes off, and Cain thinks she's going overboard, but figures it's a good occasion to be happy. On ceremony day, his parents show up to watch, while he hangs out with Tellus and Silk, who think he looks cute in his uniform. Other students are jealous because he's sitting between them, and the headmaster calls Cain up for his speech. He introduces himself, says he got his exam mixed up, but says he looks forward to being friends with everyone and hopes they get along, so the students cheer. The king then comes out to congratulate everyone, mentioning certain irregular students, and Cain feels like he's being warned. They then head to their first class, and the homeroom teacher introduces herself and tells them to think about their future and pick a course. Cain wants adventuring, but the girls don't want any of that. Tellus says since he's a baron, he needs to learn noble stuff, not sad loser stuff, so he goes with nobility, adventuring, and magic. He then asks what they're picking, and Tellus says nobility and internal affairs. Cain asks why internal affairs, and she says she wants to help manage his domain later, and Silk picks nobility and commerce. As they leave class, Cain sees some bullies picking on a girl, and he notices her ear and realizes it's Parma. The bullies are Habit and his fat dummy crew again, giving her a hard time for being a beast and saying she doesn't belong since they're all nobles. Cain pulls up and says nobles and commoners are equals at school. Habit doesn't care, but then realizes it's Cain and remembers getting his butt kicked. The boys ask why he's siding with a commoner when he's a noble himself, but Cain says he's just siding with his friend. Habit then threatens to get his father to ruin Parma's family, but then the girls show up, and the boys get on their knees and apologize, then scram. Parma thanks Cain, but the girls suddenly want to know about his relationship with her. They order him to kneel while they have a chat with Parma, then he hears a voice telling him to visit the library. He decides to check it out, but opening the door teleports him to another room where he meets a man who offers him coffee. Cain demands to know who he is and how there's coffee in this world. The man then says he's been waiting and calls him Kazuya, his name from his past life. He gives him coffee, and Cain loves it, saying he hasn't had any in 9 years. The fine-looking dude introduces himself as Yuya, and Cain identifies him as the first king from the history books. The only problem is that Yuya is supposed to be dead for over 300 years, so Cain starts wondering if this is just a very polite ghost. Yuya laughs it off and tells Cain to check his stats, so Cain opens the status window and blue screens after seeing the God of Creation title there. Yuya explains that this is another world he created, so he counts as a god now, which is why he still looks the same after 300 years. He also says he already talked with Xenum, and the other gods want him to train Cain. Cain thinks he's already pretty overpowered, but Yuya tells him to try taking the cookie in his hand. Cain goes for it, and Yuya stops him so easily. He gives him a free reminder that he still has a lot of work to do. Cain then asks why he even needs to get stronger, and Yuya finally explains that an evil god named Aaron is about to come back. Around 300 years ago, Aaron used an oracle to mess with people all over the world, planting distrust in their minds until everyone started fighting and unaliving each other. Yuya and his friends managed to seal Aaron away back then, but the seal has been getting weaker, and his return is only a matter of time. Cain then then asks why he can't just seal him again, but Yuya says that becoming a god comes with the annoying rule of not being allowed to directly interfere with the world anymore, so the job falls on Cain instead. He also says that Cain's past life is important in this matter, but before he can explain anything else, they suddenly end up in the ocean. Yuya throws Cain a sword and says the rest of the story can wait until he finishes training. He also gives him a compass that points back to the house and tells him to keep getting stronger because he needs to reach at least level 600 if he wants any chance against Eren. Cain is only around level 300, so that's going to take a while, and he also starts worrying about missing school, because somehow school is still on the list while an evil god is coming back. Yuya tells him not to worry because 1 year in this world is only 1 day back home. After wishing him luck, Yuya disappears, leaving Cain to deal with the tutorial by himself. Cain then follows the compass into a forest, where every monster in the area seems to agree that he looks like today's lunch. Back in the real world, Tellez and Silk visit Cain's mansion after noticing that he never showed up at school. Sylvia starts worrying that something bad might have happened, but Tellez trusts Cain and decides to stay there until he comes back. Meanwhile, Cain is having the complete opposite of a good time. A beast catches him after another brutal fight, and he's so tired that he's pretty much running on leftover batteries. He still manages to blast it away with magic before crashing onto the ground. Months pass in the forest, and Cain starts wondering if he will ever get out of this place. Then he hears something crying, forces himself back up, and follows the sound until he finds an injured beast lying there. He thinks about putting it out of its misery, but then remembers he always wanted to protect people instead. So he dumps every bit of magic he has into healing it, and immediately passes out. While Cain is asleep, the beast keeps other monsters away, and when Cain finally wakes up, it jumps on him and starts licking him like they have been best friends for years. Since they're both stuck out there anyway, Cain asks it to come along, names it Haku, and the two travel together. With Haku around, Cain finally has someone to keep him company, and it reminds him that giving up is not an option because he still has people worth protecting. After some time, Cain makes it back to the house, and Yuya welcomes him, talking about how much he's grown. 4 years have passed, and Yuya is also surprised to see Haku, recognizing it as a Fenrir, a holy beast, and suggests they form a contract. Cain gives it a shot, and Haku disappears, but Yuya says he can summon him whenever now. Yuya then introduces him to his next teacher, Derain. Derain tells him that he's still not strong enough because Eren is even stronger than Yuya, who is stronger than him. Later, training commences, and Cain uses his boost skill, but Derain dodges and knocks him out with one punch. When Cain wakes up sometime later, Derain has taken him in, and he meets Derain's wife, Ruri. They have a pet dragon named Gin, and Cain gets excited, wanting to be friends with it. But Haku gets all jelly and jumps on him because he seems to have issues with the dragon. Cain joins them for a meal and starts crying because it's the first real food he's had in 4 years. Meanwhile, Tellez and Silk are baking, worried about Cain but learning how to make him happy when he gets back. Cain keeps fighting Derain and gets his butt kicked every day. After a year, he's still losing, and Derain wonders how he'll beat Eren. Cain thinks back to Yuya, explaining that Eren used to be the god of amusement in the other world. He's shocked that there used to be 8 gods, and Yuya tells him that Eren used an oracle to force everyone into a death game. If he returns, it'll happen again, and everyone Cain knows will get caught up in it. Yuya also reveals that Eren is linked to Cain's past life because Eren unalived his parents, Seiya and Megumi, who were summoned as heroes. The gods couldn't interfere directly, so they gave the 3 of them an orb to seal Eren away. They fought him, but Eren wasn't affected by Megumi's magic. Yuya and Seiya charged in and managed to cut his arm, but Eren's magic unalived Megumi. Seiya activated his ultimate skill and charged, but he got stabbed. Then Yuya took the chance and sealed Eren, but Seiya died in the process. Cain thinks about saving those dear to him, so he finally overpowers Derain and completes his training. He visits his parents' graves, and Yuya says that they were always worried about him. Cain thanks Yuya for looking after them, and Yuya shows him the cookie, which Cain grabs this time. Yuya suggests coffee, but Cain is eager to get back, and Yuya points out how different he looks, but then Cain reverts to his appearance. Yuya tells him to take care of Haku, and Deering says to bring Gin along too. Cain forms a contract with it, thanks them both, and prepares to go back. Yuya throws him a sword and tells him to give it to the king. Then Cain teleports away and reappears at his mansion. The girls are hella happy to see him, and he apologizes for making them worry, but Tellez says they had faith he'd return, so they even learned to make cookies for when he got back. They welcome him home, and Cain digs into the cookies like a madman. Later, Cain meets with the king and tells him that he met Yuya in another world. The king is a doubting Thomas at first, till Cain shows him the sword Yuya gave him, so they believe him. The king then reads a letter from Yuya and learns that Cain was trained by him. Cain remembers how he was left in the forest with vicious monsters and was beaten up every day for 5 years. The king is shocked, wondering how he trained for 5 years, but the Duke just finds him amusing as usual. The Duke mentions that while he was gone, the guild was looking for him because he hadn't taken any quests since becoming A-ranked, so they might cancel his registration. Cain gets worried and heads straight to the guild. He meets Eden, who explains that when he was promoted to A-rank, he was told he'd need to take out some bandits. Cain says he's been busy with the academy, but Eden says there's a time limit or his registration gets cancelled. Cain accepts it, and Eden tells him about a group of bandits causing trouble along a road toward the capital. There are about 10 of them, but he feels Cain can handle it since he's the strongest in the city. Cain teleports to the road and flies to search from above. He spots the bandits trying to rob a carriage and goes to help. He finds his old tutors with big milkers, Nina and Millie, escorting the carriage, with Parma's father as their client. Millie is injured, so he heals her quickly. The bandits laugh at him for being a little man, but Cain prepares to make them pay for hurting Millie. He takes them all out without even breaking a sweat. One jumps at him, and he sends the guy to the gulag. All the bandits get caught, and Millie asks why he showed up. He says he was on a quest, and the girls are shocked because those are only for C rank and above, and he should have just registered. Cain reveals he's already A ranked, and they can't believe he skipped right past everything. The bandits get locked up in a cage and taken away, while the group heads to the item shop to drop Parma's dad off. Parma comes running out, happy to see her dad safe, and even more surprised to see Cain. She thought he was supposed to be enjoying his day off, but this dude is somehow still working while also doing Baron stuff on the side, so the jobless allegations have officially been beaten. Millie is shocked after hearing that Cain got promoted to Baron and starts wondering if she should act more respectfully, but Cain tells her that nothing has changed. He still sees her and Nina as his teachers, so they can just keep calling him Cain. Millie starts talking about how much he has grown and says he even looks like a proper adult now. To celebrate this completely normal observation, she pulls him into adult heaven by shoving his face into her melons again. Cain escapes before things get even weirder, saying that he still has to report back to the guild, but the girls immediately chase after him anyway. At the guild, Cain turns in the quest, and Tia is surprised he has already finished it. She's about to call the guild master when a few adventurers start bothering Millie and Nina. The girls try ignoring them, but one of the guys grabs Millie, so Cain steps in. The men recognize him right away, remember what happened last time, and immediately fold like pathetic wussies. Claude shows up, and the troublemakers run away again. Claude sees Cain hanging around Millie and reveals that she's actually his younger sister, which surprises Cain. The group grabs some drinks, and Claude asks what they've been up to. Millie explains that Cain saved them from a whole group of bandits and kicked their butts. She also says that he's already an A-rank adventurer. Claude is surprised since Cain only signed up a few days ago, but then remembers their mock fight and realizes the guy was already built different back then. Millie asks how Cain keeps getting stronger so fast, and Cain thinks of an excuse, because explaining that a bunch of gods kidnapped him for a training arc sounds completely insane. Luckily for him, Millie remembers that he killed a red dragon when he was still young, so everyone just accepts that Cain has always been ridiculously overpowered for no good reason. Claude is impressed, since red dragons are SS ranked. The girls show off the magic bags Cain made for them, and Lena asks how much they hold. Millie says she's never filled it, but Cain told her it could fit a whole mansion. Lena gets jealous, calling them national treasure level items, and pesters Cain for one. He promises to make her one, and she thanks him before passing out, so Claude says she's lightheaded. Cain realizes that he missed a whole week of school and needs to stop skipping. So Claude asks why he even goes since he's already a baron, but Cain says he still has a lot to learn. Nina calls him a good dude and offers a hug, but Cain bolts. Tia shows up and says that the adventurer meant to teach at the academy got injured, so Claude gets interested and offers to help. The next day, Cain has magic class and wants to try out his new spells from Yuya, but the teacher stops him. He's not allowed to use attacking magic because of last time. The teacher announces that the regular instructor is injured and introduces Claude and Lena as guest instructors. Claude has everyone take out their guild cards, and they're all bronze since they're new. Claude wants Cain to show his gold card, but Cain thinks that'll make him more isolated, so he says he forgot it. They move outside, and Claude starts training students one by one. Cain gets excited to show off, but Claude keeps fighting everyone else. It's part of a plan to make Cain look like a hero by having him keep up with Claude after everyone sees how strong Claude is. Cain waits anxiously, and another student tells him to get in line. Claude beats up all the others, and Cain is last, so they start to fight, but the bell rings. Claude apologizes and promises to fight next time, but the teacher says the school can't afford to bring him back since they spent their budget fixing Cain's mess. That night, Cain is pissed off and goes on a rampage through the forest. Guards think they're being attacked by the Prince of Darkness and sound the alarm. Garm rushes out to investigate, and Cain calms down and teleports home, leaving his handkerchief behind. His father shows up and finds an enormous hole with the handkerchief. The next day, the king calls Cain in and tells him about what his father found. They think it's the Prince of Darkness and want to contact other countries, but Cain admits it was him. The king chews him out, and his father lectures him when he gets home. Meanwhile, in a cave, a part of Eren gets picked up by a goblin and swallowed by a dragon, which basically becomes a vessel for Eren, and he swears revenge on the other gods. Back at the academy, Cain's class starts learning summoning magic. The teacher calls his name, and Cain immediately thinks he's getting kicked out to study by himself again, but this time, she says they're not using attack magic, so he can actually join the class. The bar is so low that Cain gets excited just from being included. Their instructor is a palace mysterious mage named Grat. He explains that there are two kinds of summoning magic. One lets people make a contract with a monster they meet, while the other uses a magic circle to call one over. Today's lesson is the magic circle version, so everyone gets a talisman. The students take turns summoning monsters. One guy calls out a huge beast, but it refuses the contract and disappears. Grat explains that he didn't have enough magic to make it obey. Then it is Kane's turn, and he starts getting nervous because the last time he went all out with summoning, things got a little crazy. Grat tells him not to worry since the monster will just disappear if the contract fails, so Kane decides to dump all his magic into it anyway. The amount of magic is so ridiculous that Grat starts panicking, and even Kane gets blown backwards. When the light clears, a demon appears sitting with so much aura and introduces himself as the Prince of Darkness. Kane immediately panics and blinds everyone with a flash spell before they can see what he summoned. He starts wondering if this demon works for Aaron, but the demon takes one look at Kane's status instead. A second later, the Prince of Darkness drops the villain act and immediately offers to become Kane's summoning. Kane is completely confused, and the demon says he will do anything for him, even wipe out an entire country. But Kane says he's not about that life. After introducing himself as Seth, the demon disappears. Grat asks what happened, and Kane lies that he failed to make the contract, and the monster vanished. Grat believes him, but still reports everything to the king, because that whole explosion was way too suspicious. The king calls Kane in and starts asking questions, so Kane admits he really did summon the Prince of Darkness, and everyone in the room short-circuits because that thing could erase the capital before breakfast. Kane apologizes and says that he just poured magic into the circle like he was told. Grat starts wondering how much magic this dude even has, while the king figures the first king's training is probably responsible. The king asks Kane to show his status and tells Grat to keep everything secret. Kane opens it, and they all find out he is now a demigod with stats that are basically just the game dev himself. The king has no idea how to deal with this anymore, so Grat immediately bows to Kane, and the Duke jokes about calling him master. Kane tells everyone to stop acting weird and treat him normally. The king then promotes Kane to Viscount, gives him his own town, and decides it's finally time to announce his engagement to the princess in public. Back home, Sylvia congratulates him, but Colin soon arrives with bad news. His brother spotted a monster onslaught in the forest. Kane heads to Gracia and meets up with him. His brother explains that adventurers have been getting attacked more often over the last few months. Some high-ranking adventurers looked into it and found that the monster population has exploded, and all of them have become way more aggressive. He also says that something similar happened decades ago, when monsters suddenly went crazy and attacked the city out of nowhere. After checking the old records, Kane sees that the monsters are acting exactly like they did during the last onslaught. His brother thinks another one is coming, but without solid proof, they can't just send the whole army into the forest. Kane offers to investigate, but his brother reminds him that he's still young. Kane pulls out his gold adventurer card and reminds him that he killed a red dragon. At that point, his brother lets him go. Kane heads to the guild, but they look down on him because he looks too young. But they see his gold card and apologize. Kane asks about the forest, and Rudy says that the monsters have become way more aggressive. Just then, Melly and Nina arrive, and they explain that the guild called in higher-ranked adventurers because the monsters have gotten too strong. So they're waiting for Claude and Lena before heading out. Rudy asks what Kane plans to do, and Kane says he is going into the forest alone, but Rudy says no, because if a noble gets himself killed, the guild will end up with problems. Kane thinks he'll be fine, but Rudy tells him to at least bring someone along. Kane summons Haku and Jin to join him, and the two immediately jump on him. Kane uses his search skill and realizes that someone's been watching him the whole time, so he decides to summon Seth. Seth shows up looking annoyed about getting called over, but the second he sees Kane, he drops to one knee like the meeting just became mandatory. Kane explains that something strange is hiding in the forest and asks Seth to check it out. Seth immediately senses an overwhelming presence nearby and says all the monsters seem to be gathering around it. He then summons one of his servants, Dalmatia. Seth introduces Kane as the god who will conquer the world, and Dalmatia instantly starts worshipping him, despite Kane not wanting that. Dalmatia spreads creatures all over the forest to search the area, and the monsters rush toward them, but Kane cuts them down so easily that Dalmatia's freaked out. Kane leaves Seth and Dalmatia to investigate while he heads back to town. Everyone is shocked when Kane casually brings back a pile of S-rank monster corpses like he just went fishing. Claude and Lena arrive and ask where all those monsters came from, and Kane says they were wandering around the forest. Meanwhile, Dalmatia finally reaches the source of the strange presence. Something warns them not to come any closer, but Seth hears that and immediately takes it as a personal challenge. Aaron notices them getting closer and sends out a massive army of monsters. Seth teleports back to Kane and warns him that the monster onslaught has officially started. The ground begins shaking, and the guards sound the alarm across town. Kane tells Rudy to inform his brother, then asks Claude to organize the adventurers and defend the town. Kane tells everyone not to worry because he's got some pretty strong friends with him. As they get ready to leave, Tijuana suddenly shows up and hugs Kane. She says her father has already declared a state of emergency and wants to come with him. Kane tells her to stay behind and help defend his hometown instead. She agrees, and Kane heads back into the forest with Seth. Dalmatia is busy fighting monsters and having the time of his life when a dragon suddenly appears behind him, but Seth immediately deletes it. Kane drops an inferno spell on the monster horde, and every monster immediately turns toward him. At the end of it all, Aaron is already waiting. Seth tells Cain to keep moving while he deals with the monster army. Cain then asks if he'll be alright, and Seth says he'll just call in his underlings for backup. The only downside is that they might accidentally flatten part of the forest. Cain tells him not to go too crazy, but Seth says Cain should be worrying about himself instead. Back in town, Tijuana starts organizing the defenses while Nina senses countless monsters getting closer. Millie decides to head into the forest, because even if Cain is ridiculously overpowered, there is still a chance he might need help. Nina agrees to go with her, and Claude and Lena figure they can't just let the two of them run off alone, so the whole group heads into the forest while Seth summons his 4 demon generals. They show up wondering why they got called in, but after seeing the monster army, they quickly understand what is happening. Seth tells them that they're helping a friend. That surprises them because they can't imagine who's important enough for Seth to call a friend. Then Dalmatia tells them that Seth has a new master. The generals are completely confused because that sounds about as believable as Kiba becoming Hokage. Dalmatia tells them about Cain, calling him a demigod and the god's chosen one. The generals still cannot believe it, but Seth tells them to stop standing around and help deal with the monsters. Meanwhile, Cain keeps slicing and dicing monsters as fast as he can, but there are way too many of them, and then a huge blast of fire comes flying at him. Cain blocks it with his own spell, and the one behind the attack finally appears. It is a black dragon, and Cain immediately realizes this is Aaron. Aaron complains that he could not come back at full power, but that doesn't stop him from summoning even more monsters to attack the town. Cain tells him to stop, but Aaron treats the whole thing like a game. He just wants to sit back and watch humans get eaten for fun, like this guy seriously needs a hobby. Elsewhere in the forest, Cain's friends spot the demon generals fighting against the monster horde. At first, they have no idea who they are, but after seeing them attacking the monsters instead of people, they figure they must be working with Cain. Even the demon generals can't hold back the endless wave forever, and Seth realizes that they'll have to rely on the humans to cover the rest. Back at the main fight, Aaron notices Cain's eyes and says that they look just like the ones from the people who sealed him away long ago, and Cain realizes that he's talking about his parents. Aaron breathes fire at him, but Cain dodges it and fires back with Inferno. It hit Aaron, but he barely reacts and says something that weak isn't gonna do anything. Cain starts thinking about using a stronger spell, but Aaron does not give him the time. He charges straight at Cain and keeps the pressure on till Cain summons Haku and Gin to help. The two manage to knock Aaron to the ground for a moment, but Aaron smacks Haku away with his tail before turning his breath attack toward him. At the same time, Cain's friends keep fighting the monster army, but they slowly start running out of energy and start losing. Claude is struggling against a giant beast, but it suddenly drops dead out of nowhere because Tijuana and her knights arrive just in time to back everyone up. Back at Cain's fight, Aaron's breath attack is about to hit Haku, but Jin jumps in front of him and takes the attack instead. Aaron keeps blasting attacks at Haku and Gin, so Cain jumps in to protect them instead. He starts thinking about everyone he wants to protect and finally activates his father's ultimate skill. The second Aaron sees it, he realizes it is Emperor-level magic. Cain fires the spell, Aaron pushes back with his own attack, and the two beams crash into each other. Cain keeps pouring more and more power into the attack because he refuses to let anyone die. Then Haku and Gin suddenly bite him. Cain has no idea what they're doing until Seth and Dalmatia show up and tell him that he has already gone way overboard. Cain looks ahead and realizes that there's nothing left of Aaron. The fight ended a while ago, and he was basically trying to delete the map after the boss was already gone. Seth tells him that the monster onslaught is over, too. The surviving monsters have already run back into the forest, so the town is finally safe. Cain celebrates with everyone, and then immediately gets called in by the king. The king asks about the giant beam of light because people across the entire kingdom saw it and started thinking a god was coming down from heaven. So Cain explains that he had to use Emperor-level magic to beat Aaron, but the king reminds him that maybe turning half the sky into a flashlight should not be the first option every time. After everything, Cain is officially promoted to Viscount and given the domain of Dorenthal. Right after the ceremony, Tijuana explains that Dorenthal is basically the kingdom's biggest headache. Every noble who ruled it failed because the Adventurers Guild has way too much influence there. Tellez wants to complain to her father about giving Cain such a troublesome place, but Cain is completely fine with it. Everyone believes he can pull it off, but they all remind him not to go overboard. As soon as he arrives in Dorenthal, he causes enough chaos that a guard has to report everything back to the king. Apparently, Cain's first stop is the Adventurers Guild. The local adventurers try to give him a welcome, but Cain ends up beating all of them up. After that, he heads to a tavern and sees some guys kicking one of the maids around, so he kicks them out instead. The only problem is that the guards end up arresting Cain, too. Back at the palace, the king listens to the report, wondering what kind of day Cain is having now, while the duke is just enjoying the whole story. Later, Cain tells Tellez and Silk everything that happened in Dorenthal, but Seth suddenly appears, begging for help. It turns out Seth got caught cheating, and his wife threw him out of the house. A few seconds later, his wife shows up too. She politely greets Cain before asking what he thinks about Seth cheating on her. Cain says Seth is obviously in the wrong, especially since he already has such a beautiful wife. Seth tries defending himself by saying wives change after marriage, but Tellez and Silk immediately shut him down. Meanwhile, the king keeps getting more updates about Cain. The guard reports that Cain even wiped out the local dark guild. Before the king can recover from that, the guard says Cain also built a wall around the town. Then he says that it's not just a wall, but an entire castle. Tellus realizes that it's even bigger than the royal palace. She can already imagine how her father is going to react, and they tell him that he's gone overboard as always. Will Cain eventually become a demigod who attracts endless baddies like Yuya, or will he take a break from being an overpowered virgin? Comment part 2 to find out, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this.